Hello, everyone, and welcome to HIA. When we talk about empowered women with crucial roles in modern society, it is easy to think about Saima Mohsen. On February 2nd, she became the first or the acting U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. That made her the first Muslim to obtain this position in Michigan and in the country. I'd like to welcome Saima Mohsen. It's great to have you on the show. And how are you this evening?
Well, good evening, and thank you so much, Hanan, for having me on the show. I'm doing really well. How are you?
Good. I'm great. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your position as the acting U.S. attorney. And I want to ask you, first of all, about your role before we get into your journey coming from Pakistan to the United States. So first of all, I would like to talk about your role as a chief federal law enforcement official that requires your involvement in the prosecution of a broad variety of cases, and such as drug trafficking and international terrorism. And for the last 20 years, one of the probably main concerns in America is the international terrorism. Do you think today that domestic terrorism is taken over the threat of international terrorism? And how do you address that? And how do you contain it from within?
Well, first, thank you for your kind words. It is a great honor to have been made the acting United States Attorney and to be the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for the Eastern District of Michigan. What your viewers may or may not know is that in Michigan, we have two districts, the Eastern and the Western. Yes. And so the larger of the two offices is our office. This is the population sort of center of the state. And so it is really the highlight of my career to be able to have such an amazing impact on the safety and welfare of, our citizenry and the great citizens of Michigan. We have a lot of different types of cases that my office handles. We have a number of divisions. We have a criminal division, which is the largest of the divisions in our office. We have a civil division. We have an appellate division, and of course, an administrative division. And as the acting U.S. attorney, I am in charge of all of those four divisions. And within those divisions, we do a lot of different types of work. As you know, we're at an international border. We have a very large density of Arab Americans. We have a lot of cases involving public corruption and drug trafficking. We are leaders in the healthcare fraud investigations that we handle. We do a lot of child exploitation cases. We do a lot of violent crime cases. And so the menu, if you will, of the types of cases that we handle is very, very broad, because we have a lot of threat areas. And so I think that one of our priorities in the last year or so, in addition to trying to address a very serious violent crime problem that we have in the district and really nationwide, but in addition to that, our other priorities are protecting civil rights, making sure that we're keeping our community safe from threats, whether they're from within or from without, and making sure that we protect our children. There's a lot of unemployment insurance fraud and PPP CARES Act fraud, and so we deal with a lot of that type of work as well. In our civil division, we defend the United States against all kinds of claims, and we have a civil rights unit, which is a very robust unit that does things like enforce civil rights legislation and protect the civil rights of our community. And so we have a very diverse office. We have a very large office. Technically, it's called an extra large office. And I'm very proud of the good work that we do.
Okay. I'm going to ask you something about racism. The death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and other Black Americans had ignited racial unrest in a big way. And we saw that, through protests all over the world. What do you think about, what makes racism such a complicated problem to solve? And how can we have a more equitable society?
Well, I can't answer those questions. I can really only tell you that we work very hard every day in the United States Attorney's Office to look at every case, whether it's a civil case, a criminal case, an appellate case, and we look at the facts of the case, we look at the evidence in the case, and we proceed with the facts and the evidence of each case as fairly as we can. And it doesn't matter to us, what the politics might be, because fundamentally our office is apolitical. We do our job without regard for what politics, are out there. We have to look at things very, very fairly. And that's what we strive to do every day. And it doesn't matter, what's happening sort of outside in the world. We want to do the best work that we can. Now, to do that, we have to hire the most qualified, dedicated, and honest and ethical people that we can. And I think we've done a really good job, not just recently, but over the years, in seeking to find candidates that meet the highest standards of ethics, because that's an important first step.
Yes.
And we work very hard to work with our staff to ensure that, that we do it right. And so I can talk about that.
Okay.
There's a lot of people talking about the other stuff.
Okay. Well, I would like to talk about something that you probably can talk about, which is the unemployment fraud. And Michigan reported hundreds of thousands of fraudulent fraud. So how are you handling this, and how can you prevent these fraud from happening?
Well, as everybody knows, there's a lot of money that's been given to people or made available to people who are in need during this COVID epidemic or pandemic. And that money has been made available either in the form of loans that are given for payroll, for small businesses, or unemployment insurance.
Yes.
And so that money is given to folks for that purpose, to provide relief, much needed relief to the average person who's really suffering. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that with sort of the infusion of that type of cash, there is a very large amount of fraud that is occurring. We've seen, and you'll see that I've been speaking about this. We are trying to identify the individuals who are responsible for obtaining these types of funding, or obtaining this type of funding fraudulently, and we're pursuing those cases very vigorously. We've devoted extra resources to this. I believe that because of those extra resources, we're able to take on more cases and investigate them fully. Now, one of the differences that you'll see between state and federal practice, in federal court, we have the opportunity to really develop cases, especially the larger ones that are more impactful to the community at large, like these larger fraud cases, and we're pursuing them. So we've devoted additional resources. We're focused on it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to send a message to people that if you're engaging in this type of activity, we are going to find you and we're going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law.
Okay, you have mentioned once about the criminal activities that have increased during the pandemic. What are some of the factors that have contributed to this, rise of criminal activities?
That's an excellent question. I think that there are probably a number of factors, and I think it's going to take time before all of that information sort of is sifted through to determine what the causes are. I can say that I don't think that the pandemic has helped.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, we're seeing this trend not just in Detroit, but we're seeing it across the country. So I can't help but think that has to be a contributing factor, because for many, many years, violent crime rates across the country were declining steadily for a long, long time. And now we have begun to see an upswing. I think Detroit is fortunate because we have had increases, very alarming and troubling increases, but they're not as drastic as in some other places across the country.
Okay, I'm sure during your or throughout your career, you have worked on organized crime. What is the probably one case that was most memorable to you?
So I've had a lot of great cases over the years. I've been very, very fortunate because I've gotten to work on a variety of cases throughout my career. I think some of the cases that really stand out are the ones that involve children and child exploitation, human trafficking. I've had the privilege of working on cases where, we were really able to make an impact on groups that were involved in trafficking young women. And when they traffic minors in particular, that's something that's really very rewarding. I also had a very large racketeering case, organized crime case involving a violent motorcycle gang that was headquartered in Michigan, but whose activities really spread out all across the United States. And that case was also quite memorable to me.
Have you ever felt that your safety is at risk? Your personal safety?
I think that, we all take our personal safety very seriously. And I would have to say that, it's something that we do have concerns about at times, but I like to say that, I hope that the prosecutor is someone who hopefully is the last on the list, because witnesses, unfortunately, I think sometimes can be the focus of, they face greater dangers, people who may have witnessed a crime than someone like me. But at times it can be disconcerting.
Okay, that's great. I want to ask you about the Arab American community. And, the greater Detroit area is home to the oldest and largest and most diverse Arab American communities in the United States. How close are you to the community?
So as a Pakistani, who was born in Pakistan, sometimes people think that we're Arab. We're actually from that Indian subcontinent. I feel very close, though, to the Arab American community. I feel that I've always been embraced, and I really appreciate that. I love to visit Dearborn. I love Arab food and culture, and I really am grateful for the fact that I have the opportunity to enjoy it, all of the various diversity within the Arab community since coming to Michigan to live.
So how have you seen the community evolve throughout the years?
That's a tough question. Again, as someone who is, essentially a non-Arab, I'm not an Arab speaker.
Sure.
But, I think that, the diversity of the community is something that's always impressed me. Just the sheer number of people from so many different parts of the Arab world, from Southeast Asia, or not Southeast Asia, but India, Pakistan, that region is very it's very exciting.
Yes. And there is approximately 400,000 Muslims in Michigan. What do you think the most challenging part of being Muslim in the United States?
So I think that it's challenging because when you want to raise your children and you want them to feel proud of their background, their ethnicity, their religion, and you want them also to have a sense of belonging.
Yes.
When you get up and you move to another country, it's really important to assimilate into a culture and to feel that you belong. And I used to say to my father, that he was lucky that when he grew up, he had a very clear cultural identity. And when we moved to the United States when I was a young girl, it was more challenging to be raised in the United States with both the old values that your parents want to instill and the values of the society that you live in and that you plan to live in and raise your children in. So I think one of the more challenging aspects is to instill a sense of pride in your children and provide them with the type of education that you want to provide them with.
Absolutely, and I have to agree with that. And we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back with Saima Mohsen. See how we have question here. Are we still on? Welcome back to Hiya Show. I'm still with Saima Mohsen, the acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. Yes, Saima. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about your journey a little bit. You were born in Pakistan. What was it like to be a child in Pakistan?
I was very young when I came, so I don't really have much of a memory. But over the years, I visited as a child. It was amazing.
Okay.
Really, really amazing.
Okay, we want to talk about your journey coming from Pakistan to the United States to be a U.S. attorney. So tell us just a little bit about that and some of the challenges that you had to go through.
Sure. So my father came to the United States before my mother and, the family did. And that was because he had been given an opportunity to get a master's degree in social work. He worked in mental health and was able to come to the United States for that purpose. He was offered a job. And I remember, I love to tell the story that in those days, you didn't pick up the phone, even a landline, and call Pakistan because really there weren't many phones.
Okay.
So he wrote a letter to my mom, and he, in Urdu, and wrapped, some money, a wad of cash, and mailed it to her, and said, "We're moving to the United States." And many years later, I asked my mother, did you guys talk about it? Was that something that, that you wanted to do? And she said, "Well, he said we're moving, so we moved."
That was it.
That was it. And, she knitted some, woolen hats and sweaters per the instructions. And we boarded a number of different flights because in those days you really didn't have a direct flight.
Yes.
And it took, I remember, probably 48 hours of straight travel. And then we came to the United States, and we were, we lived very, very frugally, very carefully. My father, though, who was a wonderful man, and he, he didn't make a lot of money. My mom worked nights, he worked days, so that they could always have someone at home with the kids. And he lived and chose wisely. He decided that he wanted to raise his children someplace where the school system was a very good school system. And I think that was the right decision. Even though economically, perhaps it was not a good decision because they really had to exercise a lot of care. My mother sewed all my clothes, bolts of fabric and, that type of thing. So, but his priorities were very, very clear. Where, we want to educate our children. We want them to have opportunity. And I think as the daughter of, of this man, I probably was the most fortunate. Not that my brothers were unfortunate, but when I look back on it, I realized he was the perfect father for a daughter. Very supportive, wanted me to achieve whatever I wanted, supported me in every possible way. And that is just something that I think as an adult, you think about, where would you be where would I be but for him? My mother was wonderful and very supportive as well. But as a daughter, it was really impactful to have a father who cared deeply about his daughter's education. And so, their only instructions to us growing up was study hard, don't go anywhere,
just like
that kind of thing.
Immigrant.
Yeah. Yes. And it doesn't matter if you're from Pakistan or from Lebanon or where you're from,
Exactly.
My grandmother, she lived with us, and, we had a wonderful sort of, family experience, very family intense. We were a very small family, but really very good. And so, one thing I think about now and is that, we didn't really have a lot of money, but we didn't really know it, and we didn't really care. Because you had so many other blessings, and that, that matters a lot. Your parents love you, that they care for you and they want what's best for you. And I think that children need to feel that. It doesn't matter if they have, this, that, or the other item. It's really that matters. And so I had that. I was very lucky. Very lucky.
That's good. I want to talk a little bit about your career. When you started your career in Manhattan, and you worked for the famed District Attorney Robert Morgenthau. Tell us about this amazing experience.
Oh, it was unbelievable. So I had decided that I wanted to be a prosecutor.
Okay.
I wanted to do criminal law, and then at some point I decided I wanted to be a prosecutor. And I think that, having seen the ravaging effect that corruption has on a society, I wanted to be part of the system that protected people and protected the public. And so I had interned when I was in law school with actually the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey. I didn't know what a U.S. Attorney's Office was. I had been an intern there. And I got a job offer in Manhattan when I graduated, because, we don't really hire, U.S. Attorney's offices don't really hire people until they have some experience. Okay. And so my goal had been to become an assistant United States attorney at some point. But working in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office was something that was like a dream. So I went and I worked there. It was grueling, very, very long hours, very little pay, lots of camaraderie, interesting cases, and you did feel very good about the work that you were doing. So
and you got the great experience there, for sure.
I got very, very good training. We talked every day. This is something that I'm very proud of. Every day, the whole leadership, because leadership matters, because it's the messaging from the top. We all know this, right? But the messaging from the top was very consistent. You do what is in the best interest of justice. You're not here to get a conviction. You're here to do what's in the best interest of justice. Whether that is to dismiss a case, whether that is to seek, a harsher penalty because of some very significant aggravating factors, and everything in between. Our job was to assess each case, each person as an individual, and to do the right thing. And the reason why I think that that's so important is that every time, as a young prosecutor, I was struggling with a decision, all of my mentors, all of the people who I had any respect for, their statements to me were consistent. Well, what is the right thing to do? Not the easy thing to do. What is the right thing in this case with this person and this victim? And that stays with you.
So, so after Manhattan, you moved to Michigan in 2002. First of all, why did you move? And then what are the most striking differences of working in New York and in Michigan?
Well, in between, I worked for the Attorney General's office in the organized crime section in New Jersey for a few years. Okay. And then I moved to Michigan. I think that the biggest difference, first of all, this is the Midwest. And that's the East Coast. Those are culturally very, very different things. Yeah. And so I think I had a little bit of a culture. Who knew that I would have a culture issue? Because again, picking up from another country as an immigrant, growing up on the East Coast, I had no idea that moving to Michigan, 500-600 miles away, was going to be culturally different, American culture different, right? So that was one thing that I was a little bit surprised by, and that took some time to sort of adapt to the culture here. And then secondly, I think the bigger difference, which I think is not a cultural difference really, but it's the type of work. When you work for the state, when you work in a county, whether it's Wayne County or Manhattan, you're doing essentially a different type of work, what we call predominantly reactive cases, right? Someone robs a bank, and now someone's been arrested, and now we know who the person is. We have the evidence in hand, and you take the case from there. Federal cases tend to be a little bit different because we do a lot more investigation. And we typically, in addition to having different crimes that we pursue, but we do, usually a more extensive investigation. And sometimes we might be doing an investigation for a period of time before any arrest is made or before people are even aware that the investigation has been ongoing for a period of time. So that is a different kind of work from what you might see in the state. And so when you think about the average, or the typical, I should say, state case, those are crimes that, there's a theft or an assault or a drunk driving or a murder, serious crimes, a rape. But the investigative period of time is usually not always smaller than what you might see federally.
Yes, and I think throughout your experience, do you think, or would you say that the state of Michigan has more violent crimes than New York, or not?
In the well, that's a population question, but in the 1990s, when I was a prosecutor in New York, the violent crime rates in New York were very, very high.
Yes.
And over time, they have gone down. I would have to look at the stats, but I know that New York is not what it was when I was a prosecutor there, from the perspective of, you know, the volume of crime. But of course, that's an area which at the time had, you know, the larger New York area had 9 million people. You know, we have almost 800,000 population of Detroit. So from city to city, it's a dramatic difference.
Okay. So has there been a time when you second guessed yourself and your accomplishments? Has it ever happened when you have those doubts throughout your career or getting to your position?
I don't know that you know, we all second guess ourselves. I think that's something that is human. I think if you don't second guess yourself about, you know, decisions, you know, that may not be a good thing either, because you're always evaluating, you're always thinking, you're always assessing, you know, and so I think that's an important part of the process. But from the perspective of my career, no.
That's good. That's very good. So I'm going to talk, do you believe that even in 2021, being a woman is still a disadvantage to become a high-ranked attorney, or not?
For me personally, it really has not been. I have not experienced any disadvantage, frankly. I've been in a male-dominated profession for 25 years, starting in New York and all the way up until now. That's changing, but I think when you're young in any career, whether you're a male or a female, and I think perhaps for women when they're younger, it might be more challenging, because I think people do treat younger women differently. As you get older, it becomes a little bit easier. But competence, I think, strength of, you know, your confidence makes a huge difference in overcoming, I think, some of those challenges. It's not always easy, but I've been very lucky. I've worked with really professional people, by and large, and to the extent that there were challenges, I don't remember them. So they may not have been that big a deal, and to the extent they existed, they made me stronger.
So you were lucky, you never experienced that. That's great. Do you ever feel that you did anything specific in your career to make your way to such a prestigious position?
You know, that's a difficult question. I don't know that I would hear that. I think that hard work, you know, being an honest person, being a straightforward person, trying to do the right thing every day, I think that those things matter. And they matter to me. They matter to me when I look at those who I see around me. Those are the type of people, again, you know, when you start with management at the top, if management at the top values hardworking, honest, straightforward, productive people, I think that's more important really than anything else. And that should be rewarded. I have seen that value system at play. I work very hard to maintain and instill and keep that value system going, because it shouldn't matter at all. Really, those are the things that do matter. Merit.
Okay. So what are some words of wisdom that you would like to say to girls today? Some of them might be still going to schools or universities. What would you like to say to them today?
I think that I would say dream and don't let anybody tell you not to. I feel very lucky because, you know, we've all faced struggles throughout our lives. When you see someone in a position, you can't imagine that they've struggled, right? Or that their life story may have been so different from your own. And I think that it's important to realize that your struggles make you stronger, and confidence is really important, especially for young women. You know, you talked about second guessing earlier. Sometimes I wonder if women don't second guess more than men do. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if that's not the case. But I would say women, you know, you can do it. You can achieve what you want to achieve. I still sometimes cannot believe that I've been doing this career for 25 years. I wake up every day and I am really proud and really excited about my job. I'm really happy doing the work that I do. Not a lot of people get to say that. So
Absolutely.
pick a dream, pick a goal. And if you have a goal in your mind of what you want to achieve, you can achieve it. Be persistent and be confident.
A great message. I think, Saima, Mohsen, we took some of your time today. I want to thank you for being with us tonight. And we wish you the best of luck on everything that you do. And thank you very much again. Saima Mohsen.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
And have a good night. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.